I'm Rob Dietz.
I'm Jason Bradford.
And I'm Asher Miller. And welcome to Crazy Town, where the future looks like the past, only shittier.
Today's topic, status-seeking behavior. Plus, in the George Costanza Memorial Do the Opposite segment, we'll have an interview with Sandra Goldmark, author of the book Fixation, How to Have Stuff Without Breaking the Planet. Hey, you guys remember the TV show Cheers?
Of course.
Oh, do I? Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name.
Dun, dun,
Okay,
dun.
great. I knew that was going to happen. Everybody remembers Cheers. That was my favorite show.
Everyone of a certain age.
Yeah, that's true. It was my favorite show of the 80s. I'm sure it's available on Netflix or, so maybe it's got some crossover to younger people.
Maybe, yeah.
Well, I wanted to tell you guys about my very favorite episode, or at least a chunk of it.
Bring it on.
Yeah, because this is our shared history, the TV that we watched, right?
That's right.
Right. So there was a special episode where the bartenders, Woody and Sam, wanted to get a raise. And so let me just play you the clip to start it.
Please.
Hey, so did you get the raise?
Sammy. It's more to life than money.
No, you didn't get the raise.
I got something much better. You're looking at Cheers' new senior bartender.
That's right.
So here you got Woody, the younger guy, going in to try to get a raise, and he comes out as the senior bartender. And Sam says to Woody, you just got totally suckered. You let the boss give you a title instead of a raise. And Woody's kind of like, well, I'd like to see you do better. So then Sam goes in to get a raise.
So, Sam, how much did you get?
Well, it's kind of complicated, Woody. It's all tied up with bonuses and stock options. But I can tell you that you're looking at the new executive supervising bartender.
And so Woody's totally upset. He's like, you just couldn't stand that I had a title and you didn't. And Sam comes back with this, oh, Woody, titles don't mean anything. It's not anything important. And Woody goes, oh, well, you want to switch? And then Sam's he's like, yeah, right. Like senior bartender. I've been looking for that all my life. So they're having this titles competition. And then Carla, if you remember that character, she was like,
she was great.
Yeah, she's a waitress.
Smart ass.
Complete insult queen. She comes in with this clip.
All right, knock it off, all right? Well, the senior idiot bartender and the executive supervising moron shut their yaps for about 10 seconds. You're bartenders. That's it. You're a bartender and you're a bartender, period.
Carl's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, me too.
I, however, am the managing director of waitresses.
Right. Exactly.
So Carla, she's amazing. She comes in with the actual bartender. You guys are equals. What'd she say? Will you two shut your yaps? I feel like saying that to you guys sometimes. But
Remember, I'm the executive director.
Yeah, right. Hey, I'm president of the board.
Right. Oh, man, he just trumped me.
Okay.
You're the senior executive moron, and you're the... But so, here comes this insult queen she's actually the voice of reason.
Yeah.
And I thought there was a really genuine sweet moment there where Sam offers Woody a peanut. He's got a handful of nuts, and Woody's like, yeah, you're right, sorry. It's like they're back on equal footing. So the competition between Woody and Sam brings up this idea of seeking status and power over one another through our status displays and and to me, that's one of the big hidden drivers, one of the human behaviors that's landed us in Crazy Town.
Yeah, and I think you're right, and it's something that we've carried with us forever. It reminds me, for some reason, it makes me think of during the Victoria era. There's a period where women want to just display their status by wearing these insanely fucked up hats. Okay, first of all, I don't know if you guys get this, but hats were a big deal.
Yeah,
if you didn't wear a hat, you were walking around naked, men and women. It's this totally bizarre thing. Right?
And they were huge.
I like that it's not just a fucked up hat. It's an insanely fucked up hat.
No, go look at, just Google pictures Victorian hats. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, they would not just have feathers on their hats. They would have whole motherfucking birds, okay? Dead birds on their hats. Like, I don't even know how they kept their heads up.
It's like wearing a Thanksgiving turkey carcass on your head or something.
Yeah, but if the turkey had all its feathers.
No, I actually did a stint working for the Fish and Wildlife Service, and I remember reading a history about, they called them market hunters, and they would hunt birds for the feathers just to supply the hat industry.
Yeah, and it was out of control. I mean, it was totally out of control, and it had a real consequence on nature. I found this really interesting bit of data from this piece in Pacific Standard Magazine. This is just talking about like the dealers, the hat dealers, and all the feathers that they would cycle through to sell their hats. So in 1892, a single order of feathers by a London dealer included, this is number of feathers here, 6,000 feathers of birds of paradise, 40,000 hummingbird feathers, 360,000 East Indian bird feathers from various species, right? In 1902, so 10 years later, an auction in London sold 1,608 30-ounce packages of heron plumes.
That is absolutely ridiculous.
No, but listen to this. Each ounce of plume required the use of 4 herons. So one package used plumes of 120 herons.
Wow. So somebody had a job as a heron plucker back then.
Yeah, and there's one ornithologist estimated like 67 different types of birds, oftentimes including all of their subspecies were at risk of extinction.
And this is
just because of these hats.
Right, and this is at a period of time in our history where we hadn't deforested half of the tropical rainforest and drained all the swamps quite yet. I mean, nature was still pretty vibrant at this time, right?
Right, which is why we had to go destroy it and then put it on our heads.
Right. So this was a competition to see who could have the most iridescent feathers and the most, because I'm thinking of these hummingbirds with their beautiful, iridescent chest feathers, and they're just populating hat brims and
shiny things. This reminds me of a story. Okay. My friend, we'll make it anonymous. We'll call her Dolores, okay? She's recently divorced, and so she decides she's going to start trying to date, see what that's like again. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
Okay. So she gets on these dating apps, and she's got these, people texting her, and they're deciding if they're going to meet each other in person. And so she ends up saying, yeah, okay. And she goes on some first dates, and one of them, perfect for this, because it was a jeweler, and takes her out to a nice restaurant, starts showing her pictures on his phone of his cottage in the mountains with his big fireplace, and he's got this sports car, and then he takes her to his jewelry shop, and he's putting like a diamond in her hand and saying, "This is worth $50,000," stuff like this. And so, I mean, what's amazing is it's never ends. We're beyond the age of reproduction, right? You think
Right.
we're decades into life. Do we really have to act like we're high school kids trying to one up each other? It seems like it. And so what's interesting is she kind of was, oh my gosh, it was so blatant and over the top. I'm going to impress you with my material wealth and my shiny things, right?
Right.
Did he have any bird feathers that he could?
Right. He had a lot of jewelry apparently, and so anyway, it was funny. It was her family when she's telling the stories of this is this guy. I date him. They're all like, yeah, you go ahead and date all the poor ones and then marry the jeweler.
So status still counts for peer pressuring, or what do you call family pressuring your daughter into seeing the jeweler, huh?
Yeah, right. He has all that money, right? So there's something to that, right? Where this is a way we now get mates and try to impress.
This whole tie between money and things that you wear, it's crazy how that's seen as a positive portrayal of status. So I saw something along these lines. I was reading an article in the New York Times, and they were talking about a new T-shirt that's just come out or recently been put on the market. You guys ever remember Scratch and Sniff? Like, did you ever read a kid's book with Scratch and Sniff?
Yeah.
So this
is why my brain doesn't function so much anymore.
Yeah. Well, so that's a technology where you're on the page and there's a banana and you scratch the banana, smell it, smells like banana.
Yeah.
Genius. Some chemical factory in New Jersey figured out how to make banana smell and
kill off brain cells.
Put it in a book. Well, so there's a fashion company that figured out how to do this on a T-shirt. So there's like a cherries on the front of the T-shirt, and you can scratch it and then sniff and smell cherry.
Okay.
So I want you to take a guess how much this T-shirt costs.
Oh, Jesus.
I have no idea. I mean,
just
$75.
70. That's a good guess. Yeah. Jason, what do you got?
I'll go with 76. I'll go one over his.
The Price is Right.
Yeah.
Good game show strategy.
Yeah.
So Jason wins. The actual price, $590.
Wait, hold on a second. What do you do when you have to wash the shirt?
Oh, so it's a really good article. You should go read it. But if you machine wash it, there goes your scratch and sniff. No more sniff. You can scratch all you want, but you won't smell anything.
So there has to be this this sort of math equation to figure out where's this moment where your body odor like surpasses the capacity of this smell.
Does it come in tank tops? Because otherwise I'm messed. I wouldn't. I mean,
right. You're not supposed to scratch and sniff the armpit, okay? But I guess that's part of the status with this shirt is how expensive it is, and the fact that you have to hand wash it. Maybe you only wear it once. I don't know, but
oh, Jesus Christ,
totally unbelievable. So I always think how irrational. Like the three of us obviously aren't going to buy this shirt, but what motivates somebody to do that?
Are. I mean, we're laughing about this. We're calling it irrational,
right?
What your friend, the guy that's like basically trying to win your friend over by showing her all his wealth.
Yeah.
Sounds like to me crass and lame, but this is being driven by something deep in us, and it might not be irrational at all. And one thing I want to point out is, at least from the cursory study that I've done on this, in terms of behavior, it's not. It's about relative status. That's what really matters a lot, right? It's our relative status. And in fact, they've done studies where they've, asked people, for example, would you rather live in a 4,000 square foot home, which is enormous, right? In a neighborhood where all the other homes are 5,000 square feet, or would you rather live in a home that's like 2,500 square feet or 2,000 square feet if your neighbors are living in a smaller house, right?
Right.
And people, the majority of them would prefer the smaller house as long as it was bigger than their neighbors, right?
That's right.
This relative status thing is, I think, what's really key for people. And that must come from some deep sort of evolutionary kind of, predisposition, something that gave some kind of competitive advantage or something in order for, it all comes probably back to procreation, right?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's my reptilian brain that tells me that I got to try to be funnier than you two. And that's how I can get relative status in this podcast.
Keep trying, buddy. Keep trying.
More laughs from listeners than we get.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's endearing what you do. No, I think it's true. I think, part of this is that if we were like solitary, like snakes or whatever, there wouldn't be this. We go out on our own. And all that matters is on our own accord. Can we survive, and can we hunt enough? Can we hide well enough? Can we find a mate when we need to? But I think what's going on with humans is, because we're such social animals, is that we're really lame. Anytime you set a human alone in nature, they're going to just kind of die pretty quickly. There's a few that can survive, and so in order to be safe and secure, we need other people to like us and help us. And so if you can be a king or a queen instead of a pawn, that's a better survival situation, right?
So you're saying we're all trying to be king or queen.
Yeah, or, bishop or whatever, or knight.
Or at least show off that we're competent. I feel like I was just thinking about the feathers, going back to that a little bit. we actually are acting like birds. You know, you go watch David Attenborough BBC thing, and he shows
the birds of paradise.
Look at this species jumping up and down, and then like suddenly an orange feather pops out of its butt or something. Like it shows some display, and that's like, oh, we just copied that, or we're doing the same thing. Maybe we have the same brain part that's telling us.
The peacock is a classic example.
I want to take this guy's jewels and I want to throw them in a forest and see what these birds do with them. That's what I want to
do. I think what matters maybe for kind of our purposes, when we think about this as a hidden driver, is there's a real consequence to this behavior, from the standpoint of what we're doing to the natural world. And, how we're impacting one another, when we think about just, an equitable and sustainable societies, this behavior. And it's, this may be deeply ingrained in us and has been in us as a species since, the beginning. But there is something different about the era that we're living in.
Oh, right? It's sort of super normal stimuli. It's been hijacked. So it's taking something that, you can, in the jungle, the birds are going to go gather some things and make these beautiful. We should definitely post some link to some video of this, which is just incredible. The birds of paradise and these birds that bowerbirds, right? And that's one scale, right? But as soon as it gets to the scale of modern manufacturing and modern advertising, and these advertisers, they're the greatest manipulative psychologists that have ever been.
Absolutely.
Because they've took all the psychology that was sort of understanding the brain in the early 20th century, and they weaponized it for making sure that the overproduction of factories would have some place to go, right?
Right.
And so...
And there's a profit motive in doing that, right? They had a very clear motive in selling stuff to people. Yeah, and then tying that to status.
Right. So you then you feel like the pawn instead of the bishop or the rook or the queen if you don't have that scratch and sniff T-shirt.
Oh yeah, you always think of luxury goods. I thought one of the greatest ad campaigns was the one telling men that they had to buy a diamond that was worth 2 months of salary in order to get engaged, right? Because now it doesn't matter what your income is. We're just going to maximize this 2 months, but it's all about that status of getting that rock and showing that you can give that away.
Yeah, and it's dangerous. It's killing us.
Yeah,
right. I mean, it really is. It is feeding. This hidden driver is feeding the beast in a sense. And I don't know that we can expect ourselves to change that deeply embedded evolutionary kind of trait in us,
Yeah, that's the thing. I think you have to, it's a matter of accepting that that's what people will do and who they are, but setting up some sort of boundaries so that we don't go crazy and kill ourselves off in the process.
Well, I agree, and I want to take you guys back to a story because I do think there's a bit of our nature in here, our brain and how it works, but there's also a big cultural piece to this, and we're living in a culture, like you say, with advertising and market-based capitalism that amps it all up. But let me just take you guys back a couple centuries, okay? I've been reading this book called Undaunted Courage. It's a historical account of Lewis and Clark and their expedition from St. Louis to Oregon, where we now happily sit. The 19th century was just brand new, okay? Slavery was still part of the economy. Thomas Jefferson was the president. I mean, Civil War was still a couple of generations into the future, so we're back a ways. So Lewis and Clark, they're leading this famous expedition. They had 30 men with them. They're paddling and poling and pulling boats against the current upstream. I can't even imagine how difficult this must have been. And they're going into territory that is populated with people who, some of them are not really wanting them to be coming through. And the first group of people that they encountered who were kind of in that position were the Yankton Sioux. And they sort of knew this. There had been some other fur trappers who had gone up, so they had a little info and knew that, hey, this could be tricky, okay? So they sent a couple scouts ahead and got the Yankton Sioux, the chiefs, to come in and have a council with Lewis and Clark. And it was a kind of a famous scene at this place called Calumet Bluff. And I think that scene says a lot about status. So Lewis and Clark put on their full Army regalia uniforms, and they ran a flag way up on a staff so that they could show we're, some kind of symbol of our power. They were firing their cannon and their guns and, just trying to show power as these 5 chiefs came in to have this council with them. So Lewis has this prepared speech. It's utterly paternalistic. He talks about the great father, Thomas Jefferson, who's now going to become sort of the head of everything. And, you guys are to submit to this. He gives gifts to these 5 chiefs. But here's a really weird twist. He picks one of them is the big chief. And he gives that guy like an actual uniform and stuff. The other guys, he just gives little medals.
Oh, interesting.
So he's sort of like putting this, hierarchical status thing on their culture without knowing a damn thing about their culture. And to me, that's what the interesting point is that a lot of tribes, hunter-gatherer cultures had ways of tamping down this status-seeking and status show-off kind of behavior because it's so dangerous. Like what you're talking about, Asher, for them, it was dangerous to their culture of sharing. And like you were saying, Jason, you don't survive on your own. So if somebody's ego gets so big and so unchecked,
they're gone.
Yeah,
they're kicked out.
Like you got serious problems. So they had a culture of tamping that down, and it kind of boiled down to 4 parts, going from not so serious to really serious. First, they would start, if Jason, you and I were out and you were hunting and you came back and you said, I'm the best hunter that ever was, and you started getting a big head, everybody would just kind of attack you with humor.
Right.
It would kind of like make fun of you a little bit. Yeah, and then that would shift to ridicule in the next phase. Mm-hmm. Well, then it would shift to social ostracism, like maybe even turning our backs on you. And then finally it would end with us chopping your head off or whatever, finding some way to push you off a cliff.
Right.
So,
well, this reminds me of that poked by a porcupine episode we did last season. Yeah. You brought this up for this tribe in South Africa.
Right.
So it's like these evolved independently in different parts of the world, and essentially is the same kind of program of
right. That was when you brought a kill back to the group, and everyone's like, this is not that great.
Yeah, it doesn't taste that good.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's good to recognize that this behavior may be with us. This tendency for social status seeking, right, and relative status may not be going away. It evolves probably slowly, and so we can't expect it to disappear overnight. But we either have a system that rewards that behavior and feeds that beast, or we have a system that checks it.
Can we stop for a second? I got to check my TikTok account.
Sure. See how many people liked your last.
Yeah. I half hour ago I put something up, and I got it. I just got to see.
It'd be interesting to think about how we might apply some of those lessons, maybe from indigenous cultures, to sort of the modern world. It's interesting. Do we say, hey, what we should do is have relative status increases when you live a life of frugality? Like that's how you show your relative status, is you spend the least or you give away the most? Or is it more just about us collectively basically shunning behavior that's, sort of abhorrently about the individual?
I don't know that there's a good way for us to say it should be this or that, but your point is right on, that our natural tendency may be to compete for status, but we need a cultural tendency that tamps that down or negates it. There was a book I read called Civilized to Death, which I really recommend. And one of the things that the author reported a hunter-gatherer person saying was, the best place for extra food is in my friend's stomach.
Wow.
And to me, that's one of those cultural ways. It's like, okay, we know we've got to share and be in the same, maybe this is a Lewis and Clark thing, we got to be in the same boat in order to tamp that down.
I also think it's worth maybe reflecting on differences perhaps that already exist in our culture based on either cultural differences or maybe even on economic class. I was talking to somebody recently who is very connected to the young farmer movement and in community, and she was saying how a lot of her friends that are all kind of working on pro-social or environmental causes, but live in these big cities and are now sequestered in their homes because of COVID. They have this sort of scarcity mindset. They're not sharing as much as the people that she knows that live a pretty tough life as young, struggling farmers who are sharing everything. You know what I mean? And maybe those of us who are really more concerned about social status are not doing it because we actually are at risk. You talked, Jason, about how social status was really important for survival. Maybe it's actually not that anymore. The ones who are really focused on survival are not seeking to hoard. They're seeking to share.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a really good point. I got a lot of potatoes in my cellar, and I'll get you a bag when we're done with this, by the way.
Do you guys got a deep fryer?
No, I don't.
Well, maybe I can get you one. We can share, and we can all have fries together.
Stay tuned for our George Costanza Memorial Do the Opposite segment, where we discuss things we can do to get the hell out of Crazy Town.
You don't have to just listen to the three of us blather on anymore.
We've actually invited someone intelligent on the program to provide inspiration. We'd like to invite our listeners to attend the Crazy Town Hall. That's our exclusive webinar for financial backers of the show.
Oh, when's that going to happen?
Well, of course, it could only happen on April Fool's Day.
What? Wait, for real? We're doing it on April 1st?
Oh, yeah, April 1st. We want to celebrate the 3 head fools in Crazy Town.
Excellent.
This is a webinar that is meant for people who make a monthly donation to the program. Any amount, whatever fits your budget. Make that donation, and we will invite you to attend the webinar where you can insult Jason, you can make fun of me, you can...
give me lots of compliments.
Yeah, yes. Compliment to share.
Last year when we did this, we were able to raise enough money to hire Melody Travers to be our producer. Maybe this year, if you guys give us enough money, you could replace us altogether.
Yeah, we'll outsource the whole program.
That would be great. It actually, having Melody on has freed us up to be able to bring on some people who are smarter than us to give some real ideas with the interviews we've been doing and really just improve the show.
So if you want to support the show, go to postcarbon.org/crazytown and hit donate.
That's postcarbon.org/crazytown. Your turn to repeat, Jason.
What are you guys talking about?
And now the George Costanza Memorial Do the Opposite segment.
Every decision I've ever made in my entire life has been wrong. My life is the complete opposite of everything I want it to be.
If every instinct you have is wrong, then the opposite would have to be right.
Yes. I will do the opposite. I used to sit here and do nothing and regret it for the rest of the day. So now I will do the opposite, and I will do something.
We know that especially in the United States, people have a pretty bad relationship with stuff and with status around their stuff. And if you were going to do the opposite, what would you do? I mean, I think instead of competing for relative status, the first thing you need to do is just recognize that that's what's happening, that society is pushing you that way. Maybe your friends are pushing you that way. Certainly the advertisers are pushing you that way. Just take a step back and realize it and understand when you're being manipulated.
Well, I think that's good, but I also think, what do you use as your competitive frame? Do you use consumption? Do you use displays of material goods and wealth? Or are you are you thinking more about like skills and knowledge? So there may be ways of working with the drive for relative status that are more pro-social, or at least not, as environmentally destructive.
Yeah, I agree. I think it starts with being aware and recognizing the behavior. It's not beating ourselves up for having the behavior, but the more we recognize it, then we could say, okay, is this an actual necessary expense that I'm incurring or thing that I'm buying? What's my motivation for acting this way or getting this thing? I think that's really key. And then, redirecting our energy and saying, okay, I know that I need these things like everyone does, so I'm going to put it to other ways of getting my status fulfillment.
Yeah. I don't know if it's just me getting older, but I feel like I've made a conscious decision not to care. Like I don't care about fashion or ways that I present myself, maybe other than what you're talking about, Jason. Like how can I be helpful or useful or of some use to the people around me and the places that I live, rather than what can I show off.
Well, I got you a body wax kit though for Christmas. I mean, do you not want that?
Well, we'll talk about that in private.
Okay.
And then the last thing might be think about what we're communicating to others, including our kids. What are we teaching them in terms of status and their relative status compared to other people?
So as usual, it boils down to being more thoughtful, using that front part of our brain that's more recently evolved than that reptilian part that's down at the base telling us to shoot 10 billion birds and stick them on our head.
That's true. That's a good point.
Sandra Goldmark is a professor at Barnard College and the director of campus sustainability and climate action. She is the founder of Fix Up, an organization focused on repair and the durability of the things we use and consume. And recently, she's written a wonderful book called Fixation: How to Have Stuff Without Breaking the Planet. Sandra, welcome to Crazy Town.
Thank you. Hi.
It's good to be talking. Hey, before we get going, I just want to say from one writer to another, congratulations on your book Fixation. It's so well written, incredibly readable and insightful. Really makes you consider a different way of relating to stuff. So really nice work.
Thank you so much. I'm very glad to hear that.
Okay, well, Jason, Cher, and I, we've been talking about status and the status seeking and status displaying behavior that we humans exhibit. And it's clear that the things we own are tied up in those behaviors. Can you just give your thoughts on how our stuff communicates status?
Yeah, well, communicating with objects is a very, very common thing in all human cultures. So I like to say that stuff speaks and that we speak with it. So a lot of my work, I'm originally a theatrical set designer. I do some costumes as well. So a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about in Fixation is household stuff, like lamps and chairs, which maybe you might not think that you're speaking with your lamps and your chairs. But you actually are in many ways. And so for a lot of people, thinking about clothing is a little bit of an easier way into the sort of idea of communicating nonverbally, because we all communicate with our clothes, right? We would wear a different outfit to a job interview than we would to exercise or to go to a party. We definitely communicate status with our clothing. That is one of the main things actually that we do. We do gender cues, status, occupation, emotion sometimes, like how you're feeling. Mm-hmm. We might lie with our clothes. Like I might actually be feeling kind of schlumpy and sad, but I might wear my snappy, red jacket so that you think I'm feeling powerful and on the ball. Or I might have low status or think that I have low status, but I might dress for success, as it were. So these are very, very comfortable and easy things for people to see and recognize. And one of the things in Fixation is the idea that actually extends to our homes, to our objects, to everything around us. It's a way to communicate and a way to not just speak, but actually define ourselves, who we are, and that this is super, super normal and not a part of humanity that's going to go away.
Well, that is a really interesting point. So if this is part of who we are, and like you said, part of all cultures around the world, And yet it's leading us into some serious problems where the way we're consuming, and, by we, maybe I'm speaking more about Americans and maybe more about well-to-do Americans, but, globally we're consuming so much and in such ways that we're damaging ecosystems, altering the climate. We're stuck in unhealthy competition. We're sometimes abusing one another with unfair labor practices and things like that. So, if this is part of us, how is it that we've gotten here? That we're that we've got this thing that we're communicating with our stuff, and yet here we are in this really tough time, this peril.
Yeah. Well, it's true that I think about that if our stuff speaks, right, what are we saying? What we're saying is not good, is maybe not what we want to say. Like, do we want to say that we totally disregard the natural environment? Do we want to say with our stuff that we disregard the labor or devalue the labor of the people who made it? In some ways, what we think we're saying and what we might actually want to say are not the same. Did you see there's an amazing article just out in Nature, a study saying that in 2020, we've tipped a certain scale where the total, they call it anthropogenic mass, I call it stuffomass, now outweighs all biomass on Earth.
I did see that, and it's really hard to wrap your head around. I was like, wow, did they just build a really big dam and that tipped us over the scales or something? But yeah, that's an incredible statistic, and it's probably one of those that flies under the radar for most people. But for someone like you who's paying attention to our stuff and paying attention to nature, that's insane.
It really struck me because when I was writing the book, I was actually looking for that statistic. I didn't even know that it was called anthropogenic mass, so I made up the term stuffomass as opposed to biomass.
Well, I like your term better.
Because I can see this incredibly deep human need to make things, right? We all make things with tools. We all human cultures feel the need to kind of represent the world around us. You can see it from every ancient human artifact all the way to when you go to a zoo, right? You go to a zoo and you watch the little Siberian tiger behind the cage, and then you go out the zoo store and there's 50, plushy Siberian tigers. We have this real need to kind of transform the world around us into our own making. And of course, the stuffomass is not made of plushy Siberian tigers. A large percentage of it is building materials, concrete, gravel, etc. But we are, in fact, transforming the biomass of the earth into objects of our own creation. So I think it's all the more urgent that we actually stop and really, as I said, figure out what we're saying. What are we really saying with all of that material, all of those objects?
Yeah.
And I think in answer to I sort of went off there, but in answer to your question of how did we get here, I think the problem for me doesn't lie in that urge to communicate status or love. When I give a gift, I'm communicating love or appreciation, or even the urge to make plushy stuffed animals. The urge to use stuff and objects to me is not going away, and there's nothing wrong with it. But the problem lies in our capacity right now. We have created a system where we have the capacity to produce stuff at such an enormous scale, and we have not built the corresponding to capacity to A, limit ourselves in any way, or B, loop that stuff and those materials back into the system, right? So we've built this incredibly powerful linear system for making concrete and gravel and bridges and plushy stuffed animals. And we haven't used our power to limit ourselves or to make sure to feed those materials back in.
That's really insightful, kind of relating the way our economy works or doesn't work back to
stuffed animals.
Yeah, well, we have this built-in way we do things, and we used to be limited by just not having the energy or the technology or the combination of those two to kind of build whatever came to mind, and we've gotten better and better at that, and kind of just let it all go. Of course, the question then that follows is, well, how could we get some system in place, or what could we do differently to change how this is happening? And I just have to say, when you were talking about our urge to do this, it made me think, well, maybe we should all just play Minecraft instead of building stuff in the real world. But I don't think that's a real answer. So I'm going to let you give us something maybe a bit more practical on how we could do something different.
I do think the popularity of games like Minecraft is even more evidence of our powerful urge to build, of how, my friend's 5-year-old child, he's so addicted to Minecraft and the building that he literally hides in the closet with the tablet so she can't find him, so he can play Minecraft. Like, it's a powerful urge.
Yeah.
But I think, obviously, there's some really big questions on the table, and I don't have the answer to all of them in terms of how, on a global scale, we build limits back in and how we create these circular systems. But I guess I do have some thoughts to offer on it. And so in the book, In Fixation, which is really focused on particular systems, largely of consumption of household objects, though the principles frankly apply to all kinds of manufacture and production. So in Fixation, I lay out this, what I hope is a simple framework. I'm borrowing from the food movement, from Michael Pollan, who I thought did such an amazing job of seeing and grasping the complexity of food, of everything that it is, which is, like stuff, pretty central to our survival and to our species. Grasping that complexity and then boiling it down into simple steps. So he said, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. So for stuff, I've adapted that to say, have good stuff, not too much, mostly reclaimed, care for it, pass it on. And the idea of these 5 steps is that they're sort of aimed at individuals in that phrasing, but they really apply to businesses and policy as well. The idea is to say, when we make stuff, it should be good, it should be ethical, sustainable, and rare. We need to not make so much of it. We need to really turn up the volume on reclaimed and used goods. We need to build repair, maintenance, and stewardship back into the economy and into our lives. And we need to build those systems for passing it on, i.e. feeding it back into someone else's home or a remanufacturing process.
Yeah, I really like your framing of that and can see how a person or an institution could try to apply it. I did want to point out that even though I couldn't articulate it anywhere near as well as you, I feel like I've been trying to do something along those lines in my own life. And I often feel really conflicted, because obviously advertising is a simple example, but society's trying to push me to consume and to buy and be part of this story. And I felt like it's a really hard thing to push back against at times and can even be isolating. So I wanted to just get your opinion on how our listeners or how anybody could deal with feeling that kind of conflict around the stuff that they buy and consume.
I think a lot of people feel that, and kind of rightfully so, because as you said, the system we're living in does not really support healthy behaviors. So we're actually living in crazy town, to borrow your phrase, but that makes us feel crazy or overwhelmed or frustrated if we try to kind of do something else. And again, I find the food analogy so useful here, and it's useful, I think, because I think a lot of people struggle with similar issues in terms of food, of overconsumption and unhealthy food being all around them, and every force in the economy pushing you to buy Twinkies when you know you should be eating salad. And the fact that, let's face it, Twinkies are yummy and kind of like easier to eat and all these things.
Right.
Maybe not Twinkies, but whatever floats your boat. So I think that the first step for me is to stop and acknowledge that, yes, a lot of the systems we live in are crazy. And so it can be very difficult and frustrating and overwhelming to feel like you have to swim upstream. And even just like forgiving yourself ahead of time, I think, is a good thing.
Yeah. Acknowledging
you're not going to be perfect. And as with food, recognizing that the effort to take this healthier path and to, as much as possible, rebalance your stuff diet is totally worth it in the long run, for yourself, for your home, for your sanity, and most definitely for the people who make your stuff and for the planet.
Thanks so much, Sandra. That's really something that I can take away and try to incorporate in my life. Sandra Goldmark is the author of Fixation: How to Have Stuff Without Breaking the Planet. Thanks again for joining me here and sharing a possible way out of Crazy Town.
Thank you very much for having me. It was fun visiting you in Crazy Town.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Crazy Town.
Yeah, if by some miracle you actually got something out of it, please take a minute and give us a positive rating or leave a review at your preferred podcast app.
And thanks to all our listeners, supporters, and volunteers. And special thanks to our producer, Melody Travers. Hey, Jason Asher, we've got a great sponsor for the show this week, Stratosphere Incorporated. I know, Asher, you've worked with them.
Yeah, I mean, when they contacted us, they said they would show us how it worked, so I signed up for it. So here's how it works, right? They ask you to provide the 10 people that you want to be better than, right? So, it could be somebody you hated in high school or whatever it is, right? So, and what they do is they collect all those people's social media accounts. Anytime one of those people posts something on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, right, that they've done something great, their algorithm automatically posts something for you that just knocks theirs out of the water.
Oh, God. This is amazing.
Yeah, so fantastic.
as because they're sponsors of our show, they let us try their stuff. So This is incredible. So I've only been doing this for like a week or so, but a guy that I really don't like, he got a new relationship status. Okay. So I said, what are they're going to one up this somehow. I'm apparently now married to the Wrigley's Double Mint twins.
Wow.
Really? Yeah. Oh, they're gorgeous.
That's awesome.
I know.
So one of my colleagues that I need to be better than went on a vacation where they took a hot air balloon ride.
Yeah.
And so I rode in a dirigible.
Oh, my God.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah.
They've got the photo of it and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. So that's one of the things that's really amazing about their service is they've got, I don't know, they got these Photoshop wizards or whatever. They take photos. You provide them some photos of you, and they'll just put you in these different scenes.
Oh, it's deep fake of the ultimate, quality.
Right.
Oh, and all the endorphins I get, the dopamine release, it's incredible. Thank you, Stratosphere Incorporated.
Crazy town, da, 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 crazy town.